Imagine a story so extraordinary that it defies logic and impossible. A young woman who, even in the face of persecution and death, remained steadfast in her faith, performing a miracle that spanned centuries. Saint Quiteria is not just one name among many saints of the Church. Her journey carries one of the most surprising stories in Christian history. But did this miracle really happen? And more importantly, what can it teach you about your life today? The answer to this question can change the way you see faith, trust in God, and the true meaning of courage. What makes the story of Saint Quiteria so powerful is not only her martyrdom, but what happened after it. Reports claim that, after being beheaded, she walked holding her own head to her burial site. Yes, that's exactly what you read. But before you jump to conclusions, think about the impact of this event. How did a story like this span generations, inspiring believers and generating devotion in several countries? Miracle or not, something in this story touches those who listen to it deeply, awakening hope, faith, and a desire to trust more in divine purposes. Whatever your opinion about the miracle of Saint Quiteria, one thing is certain. Her life and her courage continue to inspire thousands of people to this day. And perhaps, deep down, this is the true essence of a miracle, that which transforms lives, strengthens confidence, and makes us see God's wisdom in the midst of trials. But this story is just beginning, and what comes next may surprise you even more. They say that some people are born with such a great purpose that their very arrival into the world is already a sign from God. This was the case with Saint Quiteria and her 8 sisters. A single birth producing 9 children? Something unthinkable at the time. But for those who have faith, the impossible does not exist. From the womb, Quiteria already carried a special calling, and her story could not be begun in any other way than with miracle. Just as Psalm 139 reminds us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, her birth was a clear message. God has plans that defy human logic. And if we think about it, how many times do we come across situations that seem improbable? Faith teaches us that God acts in the extraordinary, and Saint Quiteria was a living example of this. Imagine the surprise and perplexity at that birth. At a time when the unknown generated fear, the arrival of 9 girls was a true enigma. But this is how God works. He does not follow human standards. He breaks down barriers and shows us that trusting in Him is a way to see beyond what our eyes can see. The most interesting thing is that this miracle was not just an isolated event. It was a harbinger of what was to come. God was already tracing a path for Santa Quiteria, and her story would still have many challenges ahead. After all, when someone's purpose is great, the journey will never be easy. But as we learn from Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6, trusting the Lord with all our heart is what keeps us steadfast, even when we don't understand His plans. Not every miracle is well received, and Saint Quiteria learned this very early on. Her father, Lucius Caius Attilio Severus, did not see his daughters as a divine gift, but as a risk to his honor. The idea that his wife might have been unfaithful consumed him, and instead of welcoming his daughters, he planned to eliminate them. Sad, isn't it? But how many times are we also rejected when we decide to follow the path of faith? Trust in God, however, teaches us that no injustice goes unnoticed before Him. What seemed to be the end for Quiteria and her sisters turned into yet another testimony of divine action. A Christian servant, moved by wisdom and compassion, took upon herself the mission of saving those children. Think about it. In a world where fear rules, there are always those who choose courage. This woman risked everything, proving that God raises people up in the darkest moments to protect us. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you've been saved from something without even realizing it? And so, Saint Quiteria and her sisters escaped the death sentence. The same God who had miraculously brought them into the world now guaranteed their survival. But this escape was not just an act of protection. It was a first step toward a much greater mission. When God delivers us from something, He does not do it by chance. He is preparing us for something that we cannot yet see, but that, with faith, we will soon understand. After their escape, the path of Saint Quiteria and her sisters was guided by faith. They were welcomed by Christians, and, in an act that would change their lives forever, they were baptized by the hands of the Archbishop of Braga. Each one was given a name that reflected essential virtues of the Christian journey, such as hope and trust in God. Baptism was not just a ritual, but a rebirth, a new identity far from the condemnation imposed by their father. Just like them, many people find in God a second chance, a new beginning to write a different story. The sisters' lives began to be dedicated to faith. They grew up surrounded by Christian teachings, learning about God's love and the purpose He had for each of them. Think about it. When someone truly surrenders themselves to God, their mind and heart are transformed. Have you ever experienced this change? Have you ever felt that moment when something inside you tells you that there's a greater path, a mission waiting to be fulfilled? That is exactly what happened to Quiteria and her sisters. Over time, their faith grew stronger and became unshakable. The world may try to lead us astray. It may test us with challenges, but those who stand firm in God's wisdom find strength where many give up. Saint Quiteria learned that trusting God does not mean the absence of difficulties, but rather the certainty that, no matter what comes, He will be there. What she did not know is that this faith would soon be put to the test in a way that few could bear. Saint Quiteria's faith did not go unnoticed. At a time when being a Christian was a risk to one's life, her devotion became a threat to those who ruled with an iron fist. Her own father, Lucius Caius Atilius Severus, upon discovering that she followed Christianity, did not hesitate to condemn her. Imagine the weight of this betrayal. The one who was supposed to protect her now became her greatest enemy. But Quiteria did not give in. Her trust in God was greater than her fear of death. How many times in life do we feel pressured to abandon our values? And how many times do we forget that true faith never compromises its principles? Cornered by the forces of the empire, Saint Quiteria was imprisoned. Many, faced with persecution, would have chosen the easier path, deny their faith, save their own skin. But she knew that her mission was greater than any earthly suffering. History shows us that the moments of greatest trial are those that define who we truly are. What about you? When life gets tough, do you stand firm or give up? Quiteria chose to remain. Amidst the darkness of prison, her hope did not waver. Then came the final sentence. She would be executed. But see how faith defies all logic. Instead of despairing, she remained serene. Saint Quiteria's courage did not come from herself, but from the unshakable certainty that God was by her side. Just like Daniel in the lion's den, like the 3 young men in the furnace, Quiteria faced martyrdom with the conviction that her life would not end there. What happened next was something that would mark her story forever. Saint Quiteria's faith did not remain silent, even in the face of death. When the executioner's sword fell, something extraordinary happened. According to tradition, she stood up, holding her own head, and walked to her burial place. This scene defies any human explanation, but it is here that divine wisdom manifests itself. The impossible becomes reality when God is in control. And how many times in our lives do we feel that everything is over, that there is no way out? But Quiteria's story teaches us that even when the world says it is the end, God can still write a new beginning. Saint Quiteria's walk after her death was not only a physical miracle, but a testimony of unbreakable faith. Imagine the reaction of those who witnessed this scene. Soldiers hardened by war, ruthless judges and convinced skeptics, all faced with a fact that defied reason. The same thing happens to us. Sometimes, the people around us do not believe that we can win, that we can rise again. But God always has the last word. If Quiteria was able to walk even after death, what stops us from continuing to move forward, even after great fall? This miracle was not only a sign of holiness, but an invitation to faith. No matter how difficult your journey is, no matter how many times they try to knock you down, God always offers a new chance. Saint Quiteria walked even when everything said she should stay down. What about you? Are you ready to get up and move forward, trusting that God has a greater purpose for your life? But that was not the only mark she left on history. Over the centuries, devotion to Saint Quiteria grew, and many began to turn to her as an intercessor against anger, both the illness and the feeling that corrodes a soul. This was no accident. Her story teaches us about the dominion of faith over circumstances, about trusting God even when everything makes us despair. Just as a person bitten by a rabid animal needs to seek a quick antidote, someone overcome by anger needs a spiritual remedy. And this remedy is divine wisdom, trust in God's purpose, and the patience that only faith can provide. Anger can be destructive. How many bad decisions are made in the heat of the moment? How many words spoken in anger leave deep scars? Saint Quiteria represents the opposite of this chaos. Serenity in the face of persecution, peace even when everything around screams war. Her intercession is sought by those who struggle with feelings of revolt and lack of control, remembering that true strength does not lie in the explosion of emotions, but an unshakable trust in God. And if today you feel that you are having difficulty dealing with this, perhaps it is time to seek refuge in faith, asking God for more patience and self-control. But it is not only in the emotional field that Saint Quiteria is invoked. Her protection is sought by those who face illnesses, especially those linked to animal rabies. In several regions, There are testimonies of cures attributed to her intercession. This reminds us that God acts in many ways and that divine help can come when we least expect it. But if faith in St. Quiteria has helped so many people throughout history, imagine the impact that her influence has had on the world. Devotion to St. Quiteria has spread to different countries, consolidating her influence on Christian culture and tradition. In Portugal, France, and Spain, her image is present in churches, chapels, and even in the names of cities, reinforcing her importance to the faithful. But what makes this saint so special? Perhaps it is her story of courage and unwavering faith, which spans generations as a living testimony to the power of God. The celebrations in her honor, held on May 22nd, are a reflection of this recognition, bringing together thousands of people who trust in her intercession. The festivals dedicated to St. Quiteria go beyond the religious aspect. In some regions, there are processions, solemn masses, and even cultural manifestations that combine tradition and devotion. Many pilgrims travel long distances to participate in these events, seeking spiritual renewal and giving thanks for the blessings received. It is an opportunity to strengthen faith, remember her story, and, above all, reflect on how we can apply her courage in our own lives. After all, trusting in God in difficult times is a challenge that we all face. In addition to the festivities, the presence of St. Quiteria in popular culture reinforces her impact over time. Her story inspires songs, plays, and even accounts of miracles that continue to be shared to this day. This leads us to an inevitable question. What can we learn from her journey and apply to our daily lives? Because, in the end, all this devotion has a greater purpose. Now that you know the incredible story of St. Quiteria, the question that remains is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Faith is not just about believing in miracles, but about living as if they were possible. If this young woman faced persecution, defied orders, and maintained her trust in God until the end, what is stopping you from facing your own challenges with the same determination? Maybe your miracle lies in the way you face your daily battles, in the hope you place in tomorrow, and in the wisdom you acquire as you walk firmly in faith. Have you been living with the same courage? How many times have doubts and fear tried to paralyze you? St. Quiteria could have given up, but she chose to remain firm. You can do the same. The question is, are you ready to truly trust in God and in the paths He has laid out for you? This may be the time to make a decision, to surrender your worries, to strengthen your confidence, and to act with a faith that transforms. If this story touched you in any way, don't keep this inspiration to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Leave a comment telling us what impacted you the most. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue receiving content that strengthens your faith and brings you closer to God. See you in the next video.